Ladies and gentlemen, every single one of us wakes up each morning with a story already playing in our minds, a script written by our past, our fears, our environment, and often by other people's opinions. But what if I told you that story isn't truth? What if I told you it's just a program? And like any program, it can be rewritten. See, I believe that the life you deserve isn't out there waiting for you. It's already inside you, waiting to be unlocked. But to access it, you don't need more money, more followers, or more motivation. What you need is a shift in the way you think, a reprogramming of the mental code that's been running your life on autopilot. Because when you learn to reprogram your thoughts, you're not just changing what you think, you're changing what's possible. You're not just chasing success, you're building a life that's aligned with your purpose. And that, my friends, is where real transformation begins. So today, I'm not here to give you answers. I'm here to give you the why. Because when you know your why think what you think, why you feel stuck, why you want change, then the how becomes inevitable. Let's dive in. Let's reprogram your thoughts and build the life you truly deserve. Your thoughts are not just passive background noise, they are the architects of your reality. Everything you experience in life is filtered through the lens of your thinking. When you wake up in the morning and tell yourself it's going to be a bad day, your mind subconsciously seeks proof to confirm it. If you believe you're not good enough, you'll sabotage opportunities that could prove otherwise. That's how powerful your thoughts are. They're not abstract, they translate directly into emotions, actions, habits, and ultimately results. That means if you want to change your life, not just improve it temporarily, but build something lasting, you need to begin at the root. Reckon that root is your thinking. We live in a world that often tells us to work harder, hustle more, and stay motivated. But what happens when the internal dialogue doesn't support the external effort? You can't outwork a mindset that keeps dragging you back to the same self-doubt, fear, and limitation. You have to rewire it. You have to reprogram it. Because your thoughts are the code running your life, whether you're conscious of it or not. Imagine trying to install a new app on a phone with an outdated operating system. It crashes or doesn't run at all. That's what happens when you try to build a new life with the same old thinking. Many people underestimate how deep thought patterns are embedded. These patterns often come from years of conditioning, from parents, teachers, culture, media, and personal experiences. For example, if you were constantly told growing up that you should be realistic, not dream too big, and always play it safe, your mind adopted those thoughts as truth. They formed mental walls that now limit how far you allow yourself to go. You may have talent, ambition, and opportunity, but those walls will keep you in a mental prison unless you choose to challenge and rewrite them. Reprogramming your thoughts means consciously choosing what gets to stay and what needs to go. It's the process of identifying limiting beliefs, questioning them, and replacing them with empowering ones. If you walk around believing, I'm not creative, that belief will silently shape every decision you make. You won't try new ideas, you'll avoid expressing yourself, and you'll confirm the belief again and again through inaction. But if you start to shift that belief to creativity is something I can develop, you open yourself up to learning, experimenting, and eventually building evidence of your own creative potential. One simple shift in thought begins a ripple effect of change in behavior and result. This is not about toxic positivity or pretending everything is perfect. It's about taking responsibility for what you feed your mind daily. You may not control every thought that pops in, but you control which ones you entertain, nurture, and give authority. It's like managing a garden. You may not stop all weeds from appearing, but you decide whether they grow or get pulled out. The more you focus on planting empowering, resilient thoughts, the more those thoughts become the dominant language of your inner world. Real change starts small. It's in the moment you catch yourself thinking, I can't, and replace it with, what if I could? It's in the decision to start your day with a powerful question instead of a complaint. Over time, these shifts accumulate. The brain is incredibly adaptable. Through a process called neuroplasticity, it forms new neural pathways in response to new thoughts and behaviors. That means your brain is literally capable of being rewired by repetition and intention. When you repeatedly feed it thoughts of possibility, strength, and vision, it starts operating from that place naturally. What felt like forced effort becomes your new default. But you have to be intentional. Reprogramming your thoughts doesn't happen by accident. It happens when you start journaling what's holding you back, when you listen to ideas that stretch your mind, when you spend time with people who challenge your perspective and reflect your potential. It happens when you practice gratitude, not just as a feel-good exercise, but as a way to train your mind to see abundance instead of lack. Every time you choose a higher thought, you reinforce a higher life. Your mind is the command center of your future. If you're not building it on purpose, you're building it by default. And chances are that default setting wasn't designed for greatness. It was designed for safety, for comfort, for surviving, not thriving. But you don't have to accept it. You can overwrite it. You can reprogram it. And when you do, life starts to mirror that internal shift. Opportunities show up differently. Challenges don't paralyze you the same way. You start to live from a place of power, not fear. And that's when you begin to truly shape the life you deserve, one thought at a time. Most of the beliefs we carry weren't born from our own independent thought. They were inherited from childhood. We absorb ideas, labels, and expectations like a sponge. Parents, teachers, society, religion, media, all of them play a role in shaping our internal world. At the time, we don't question these inputs. We accept them as facts because we don't yet know how to discern truth from conditioning. Over time, these beliefs become the blueprint of how we see ourselves and the world. The problem is, many of these beliefs are outdated, untrue, or simply not ours to begin with. Yet, they continue to run the show in the background of our minds, influencing every choice we make without us even realizing it. Think about it. How many times have you hesitated to try something new because a voice in your head said, "That's not for people like you"? Where did that voice come from? It wasn't born the day you decided to try something ambitious. It likely came from something you heard years ago. Maybe a teacher told you that you weren't talented, or your environment suggested people from your background don't succeed in certain fields. These are not truths. They are borrowed ideas, and until you question them, they will control your life. Questioning these beliefs isn't about blaming anyone. Most of the people who shaped us were doing the best they could what they knew. But there comes a point in life where you have to take responsibility for the thoughts you've accepted as your own. You have to step back and ask yourself, do I believe this because I've explored it, lived it, and found it to be true? Or do I believe it because I've heard it so many times that I never thought to challenge it? This is where awareness becomes your most powerful tool. You start to observe your internal dialogue not with judgment, but with curiosity. For example, if you notice that you always feel guilty when taking time for yourself, ask why. Who taught you that rest equals laziness? If you catch yourself downplaying your achievements, ask who made you believe humility meant hiding your light. These questions aren't just reflective, they're revolutionary. Every time you challenge a limiting belief, you weaken its power over you. This process can be uncomfortable because it forces you to dismantle the foundation you've been standing on. But what's the alternative to continue living a life shaped by someone else's fears, limitations, and outdated narratives? That's not freedom. That's mental autopilot. If you want to live with clarity and direction, you have to get off that autopilot and start flying manually with intention. Many people fear questioning their beliefs because they think it will leave them with nothing solid to stand on. But the opposite is true. When you begin to choose your beliefs consciously, you build a new foundation that is rooted in truth, growth, and possibility. Instead of being a passive recipient of thoughts, you become the architect of your own mindset. That's where real confidence comes from. Not from pretending to be someone you're not, but from knowing who you are and why you believe what you believe. And here's the most empowering part. You don't need permission to change your beliefs. You don't need validation. You don't need a perfect plan. You just need to start noticing. Awareness is the beginning of transformation. The moment you become aware of a belief that's holding you back, you have already begun the process of loosening its grip. Then you can start replacing it with something better. Something that aligns with your vision, your values, and your potential. For instance, if you uncover a belief that success is only for certain people, replace it with success is for anyone willing to grow. If you find a belief that says, "I'm not capable," replace it with "I'm capable of learning what I don't yet know." These aren't just affirmations. They are mental realignments. You're retraining your brain to look for possibility instead of limitation. The truth is most of the limits in your life were not chosen. They were inherited. But once you become aware of them, they become your responsibility. And that's not a burden. That's a gift. Because now you have the power to rewrite the script. You get to decide what beliefs serve your future and what beliefs need to be let go. And with each old belief you release, you create more mental space for purpose, clarity, and drive. This process doesn't happen overnight. It's a daily practice of noticing, questioning, and replacing. But over time, it changes everything. Your energy shifts, your confidence grows, your decisions improve. You no longer live based on what was handed to you. You live based on what you've consciously chosen. And that's when you begin to create not just a new mindset, but a new life. The way you talk to yourself is one of the most powerful forces shaping your reality. Most people don't even realize they have an inner voice constantly narrating their experiences. judging their actions, and setting the tone for how they feel and what they believe. This internal dialogue is more than just fleeting thoughts. It's the software running in the background, influencing every decision, every reaction, and every perception. If that software is outdated, negative, or filled with doubt, your entire system runs on faulty programming. But the good news is, like any software, it can be upgraded. You can consciously rewrite your self-talk and install a more empowering version of your mind. Think of the things you say to yourself on a daily basis. I'm not smart enough. Always mess things up. I don't have what it takes. This is too hard. I'll never be like them. These aren't harmless thoughts. These are mental commands. Your brain hears them and goes to work confirming them. When you say, I can't do this, your mind doesn't challenge it. It starts finding reasons why you can't. It starts scanning your memories for past failures, magnifying doubts, and even physically altering your energy and body language. In other words, your self-talk becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Now imagine shifting that dialogue. What if instead of, I'm terrible at this, you said, I'm learning and getting better every day? Instead of, nothing ever works out for me, you said, there's always a way, and I'm willing to find it. The change might sound subtle, even corny to some, but the brain doesn't care how poetic your words are. It simply responds to repetition and emotion. The more you practice speaking to yourself with belief, compassion, and possibility, the more your mind builds those pathways. Over time, you begin to operate from a higher level of mental programming. Upgrading your self-talk isn't about lying to yourself. It's about speaking truth that aligns with the future you're creating, not the past you're escaping. It's about choosing language that fuels your goals rather than drains them. The words, I am, are especially powerful. Whatever follows those words becomes a declaration to your subconscious. If you constantly say, I am tired, I am unlucky, I am stuck, those labels start to define your identity. But if you shift to, I am resilient, I am growing, I am figuring it out, you begin to step into that new identity even before external proof shows up. This reprogramming works the same way repetition works in training a muscle. At first, it feels unfamiliar, even fake. That's normal. You've spent years, maybe decades, practicing negative or limiting self-talk. Your brain has been trained to believe that voice. So when you introduce a new one, there will be resistance. That resistance is not a sign of failure, it's a sign of change. You're rewiring. You're introducing a new pattern. With enough consistency, the new language starts to become your default. It's also important to understand that your self-talk doesn't just impact how you feel. It influences how others perceive and respond to you. People can sense energy. When you speak and act from a place of inner confidence and self-worth, you attract respect, opportunity, and collaboration. On the other hand, if your internal voice constantly undermines you, it's hard to hide that. It seeps into your tone, your posture, your choices. So reconnect. Reprogramming your self-talk isn't just for your own benefit. It transforms your entire environment and how the world interacts with you. One of the most effective ways to change your inner dialogue is by becoming conscious of your triggers. Notice the moments when your self-talk turns negative. Is it when you make a mistake, when someone criticizes you, when you're facing uncertainty? Those moments are gold. They reveal the weak spots in your programming, the places where an old voice still runs the show. Catching those moments in real time gives you the opportunity to intercept the old script and install a new one. You can literally pause and say, no, I don't talk to myself that way anymore. Here's what I believe now. Another tool is writing. Putting your self-talk on paper makes it visible and manageable. Start with a journal. At the end of each day, write down the negative things you said to yourself, then rewrite them in a more empowering form. It's not about pretending everything is perfect. It's about training your mind to respond with strength instead of surrender. In the end, your self-talk is either working for you or against you. It's either lifting you closer to your potential or chaining you to your past. But you are not a victim of your thoughts. You are the author. And every time you choose a more powerful word, a more loving tone, a more hopeful phrase, you're not just changing a sentence, you're changing your story. And from that new story, you can begin to build the life you truly deserve. Every action you take, every habit you form, and every decision you make stems from one powerful source, your identity. Who you believe you are at your core silently dictates the standards you live by, the risks you're willing to take, and the boundaries you're willing to enforce. That's why any lasting change doesn't start with motivation or even discipline. It starts with identity, because you will always act in alignment with who you think you are. So if you want to change your actions, you need to first change your self-image. You need to become the version of yourself that your future requires. mentally, emotionally, and spiritually long before your external circumstance catch up. People often try to force change by focusing only on behavior. They try to build new habits or set new goals while still holding on to the same old identity. For example, someone might say, I want to be healthy. But if they still believe, I've never been disciplined, or I've always been lazy, then their subconscious identity will resist every effort to change. They might start strong for a few days or weeks, but eventually they snap back into their default patterns. Not because they're weak, but because their actions were in conflict with their internal identity. It's like trying to drive forward while the emergency brake is on. Until you release that brake, until you shift your identity, you will stay stuck in the same cycle, no matter how much effort you apply. Identity is not something fixed. It's not set in stone. It is shaped by the stories you tell yourself, the labels you accept, and the meanings you assign to your experiences. You may have made mistakes, but that doesn't mean you're a failure. You may have been quiet, but that doesn't mean you're powerless. You may have struggled, but that doesn't mean you're broken. The danger lies in attaching your identity to temporary moments rather than seeing them as passing events. The truth is, identity can evolve. You are allowed to update who you are. You are allowed to outgrow the person you used to be. In fact, growth requires it. One of the most effective ways to begin reshaping your identity is to decide with intention who you want to become, and then start acting like that person now, not after the results show up, not after someone validates you. Now, this isn't about faking it. It's about aligning your behavior with your chosen future. If you want to be confident, how does a confident person walk, speak, and show up? If you want to be a leader, how does a leader handle setbacks, make decisions, and treat others? When you embody those traits consistently, your identity begins to shift. And once your identity shifts, the actions start to feel natural instead of forced. This is why affirmations and visualization are powerful. Not because they magically make things happen, but because they reinforce a new self-image. When you repeat statements like, I am focused, I am disciplined, or I am unstoppable, you're not just saying words, you're creating alignment. You're training your mind to accept a new version of you. Over time, this mental rehearsal becomes belief, and belief is the foundation of behavior. You will start to act like the person you keep telling yourself you are. It's also important to surround yourself with people and environments that reflect and reinforce the identity you want to adopt. If you're trying to become more ambitious, but you're constantly around people who settle, that contradiction will pull you back. But when you're surrounded by people who expect greatness, who speak with clarity, who push boundaries, you rise to meet that level. Your surroundings act as a mirror to your self-image. That's why changing your circle often accelerates personal transformation. Another key to identity transformation is integrity. When you keep promises to yourself, no matter how small, you build trust with your own mind. And trust is what makes identity stick. If you say you're the kind of person who follows through, and you actually do when it's inconvenient, you reinforce that belief. Every small win becomes evidence. And the more evidence you stack, the stronger your identity becomes. You don't have to shout who you are. You'll know. And more importantly, your actions will speak for you. But remember, identity is a choice. You're not bound to your past. You're not stuck with the version of yourself shaped by fear, failure, or other people's expectations. You can decide today who you want to be. You can design a new standard for your life and then align your mindset and behavior with that standard. It starts with a single decision to stop living from memory and start living from vision. The life you deserve won't be built by the person you used to be. It will be built by the person you're willing to become. And that begins with identity, not as a label, but as a commitment to a new way of thinking, acting, and believing. Because once you become that person internally, everything else eventually follows. Discipline is often misunderstood. Many think it's about rigid routines, self-punishment, or forcing yourself to do things you hate. But true discipline is an act of self-respect. It's not about restriction, it's about alignment. When you cultivate discipline, you are telling yourself, I am worth the effort. My goals matter, my future matters. Without discipline, even the most brilliant dreams fall apart. With it, even the most unlikely goals become achievable. Because discipline is the bridge between intention and reality. It's how you translate your inner vision into consistent external action. People often wait for motivation to strike before they take action. They want to feel ready, energized, and inspired. But the truth is, motivation is fleeting. It's like the weather. Beautiful when it's here, but completely unreliable. Discipline, on the other hand, doesn't depend on your mood. It shows up whether you feel like it or not. It doesn't ask how you're feeling, it asks what you committed to. That's why disciplined people succeed, even on the days when they're tired, uncertain, or uninspired. because they've made a decision that's bigger than their feelings. Building discipline starts small. It doesn't begin with extreme overhauls or punishing routines. It starts with a decision to do one thing consistently, no matter how small. That one thing might be waking up 30 minutes earlier. It might be drinking water before coffee. It might be writing your goals down every morning. Whatever it is, the goal isn't just the action, it's to train your brain to follow through. Each time you do what you said you do, you rewire your mind. You start to believe, I am someone who finishes what I start. And that belief becomes the foundation of unstoppable momentum. It's important to understand that discipline is not about being perfect. You will miss days, you will fall short, you will feel like quitting. That's not failure, it's part of the process. What separates the disciplined from the undisciplined isn't that they never fail. It's that they recommit again and again. They don't use setbacks as excuses to stop. They use them as reminders to continue. In fact, the push through difficulty, the stronger your discipline becomes. It's like a muscle. The more resistance you face and overcome, the more powerful it grows. Discipline also protects you from your own excuses. We all have voices in our heads that say things like, I'll start tomorrow. I deserve a break. This one time won't matter. These voices sound reasonable, even comforting, but they're dangerous. Because one skip day becomes two becomes a week, and before long, the vision you have begins to fade. Discipline is the voice that says, do it anyway. Not because you have to, but because your goals are worth it. Your future self is worth it. That version of you who wakes up proud, accomplished, and confident, that version is built on the back of disciplined choices made today. Another powerful truth about discipline is that it gives you freedom. That might sound contradictory, but it's not. When you live undisciplined, you're controlled by impulse, distraction, and emotion. You're constantly reacting to life instead of creating it. But when you're disciplined, you're in control. You decide where your time, energy, and focus go. Drift, you don't direct. That kind of freedom isn't given, it's earned, and discipline is the price. To stay disciplined, you need to keep your why close. It's easy to forget why you started, especially when progress is slow or results aren't visible yet. That's why it's essential to remind yourself daily what you're building and who you're becoming. Your why gives meaning to your effort. It turns repetition into purpose. Without it, discipline feels like punishment. With it, discipline feels like devotion. Accountability can also supercharge your discipline. When you make your commitments public, whether to a friend, mentor, or even on paper, you raise the stakes. You create a standard that's hard to ignore. You turn your intentions into a contract, and that added layer of responsibility strengthens your resolve. But the most powerful accountability is always internal. It's the quiet knowing that your future is shaped by what you do when no one is watching. Ultimately, discipline is not about grinding forever. It's about creating structure, then letting that structure support your freedom, creativity, and peace. When you've trained your mind to do the hard things consistently, you no longer need to rely on willpower alone. It becomes who you are. You stop negotiating with your goals. You stop breaking promises to yourself. You stop waiting for the right time. You simply do, and in doing, you build the life that once felt impossible. You don't need to be perfect to be disciplined. You just need to be consistent and prove to yourself that change is real. Each choice, each rep, each act of self-respect adds up. And as discipline compounds, so does your progress. Until one day you look in the mirror and realize you've become the kind of person who does what needs to be done, regardless of how it feels. And that person is unstoppable. Success is not the result of a single breakthrough moment. It's the result of hundreds, even thousands of small decisions, consistent actions, and the quiet persistence of someone who refuses to give up. Most people overestimate what they can achieve in a week and underestimate what they can build in a year. Or 10. They chase instant results, get discouraged when things move slowly, and abandon the process just before the breakthrough. But those who understand the power of long-term commitment, those who stay consistent even when progress is invisible, are the ones who ultimately win. Consistency isn't glamorous. It's not exciting like a sudden success story or dramatic transformation. It's often repetitive, unrecognized, and lonely. But that's where its power lies. Because while others are distracted by shortcuts or quick fixes, the consistent person keeps showing up day after day. When it's hard, when it's boring, when there's no applause, that level of dedication compounds over time. It builds not just skill, but identity. You don't just become someone who works hard, you become someone who doesn't quit. The problem is that most people crave visible progress. We want to see results to feel like the work is worth it. But the truth is, in the beginning, progress is mostly invisible. When a seed is planted in the soil, it doesn't sprout overnight. There's a hidden phase, roots growing downward before anything appears above ground. If judge the seed by what you can see too soon, you'll assume nothing is happening and give up. But those who understand growth know that the work done in silence, the work no one sees, is what creates strength that lasts. This is why you must learn to trust the process, even when you can't see the outcome. Every rep at the gym, every late night spent working on your craft, every uncomfortable conversation you choose to have, it all counts. Even when it feels like nothing is changing, something is. You're changing, you're becoming more disciplined, more capable, more focused. And over time, those internal shifts create external results. Success doesn't show up all at once. It accumulates like interest in a bank account. The compound effect of consistency is unstoppable once it builds momentum. To stay consistent, you must fall in love with the process, not just the outcome. Goals are important, but they are only milestones. The real win is becoming the kind of person who lives in alignment with your values every single day. The kind of person who doesn't need motivation to do what's right. When you shift your focus from results to rituals, from outcomes to effort, you become untouchable. Because now, your power isn't tied to success, it's tied to your identity, and no one can take that from you. Structure helps, routines help, systems help. The less you leave to chance, the more consistent you'll be. If you wake up each morning wondering whether or not you'll follow through, you're relying on willpower. And willpower is limited, but if you've created a routine where your priorities are non-negotiable, you've already made the decision before the day begins. Successful people don't make decisions based on how they feel. They decide once, then build systems to support that decision over time. But consistency also requires patience. You must be willing to play the long game. You must accept that some weeks will feel stagnant, that some efforts won't pay off right away, and that some people will question why you're trying so hard for results they can't yet see. That's okay. Because you know something they don't teach: success isn't about speed. It's about sustainability. The fastest sprinters often burn out, but the ones who keep showing up, even when it's hard, they're the ones still standing when everyone else has quit. One of the most underrated benefits of consistency is confidence. Every time you follow through, you're building self-trust. You're proving to yourself that you are someone who keeps their word, and that trust becomes unshakable over time. You stop needing external validation. You stop comparing your journey to others, because you know you are on your path. You are doing the work, and that is enough. There will be days when nothing seems to be working, days when doubt creeps in, days when quitting feels easier than continuing. In those moments, remind yourself why you started. Remind yourself that every master was once a beginner, that greatness is built in the trenches, not in the spotlight, and that the only way to fail is to stop. If you stay in the game, if you keep taking one small step forward, even when it's uncomfortable, you will eventually find yourself standing in a life that used to feel impossible. Consistency is your superpower. It doesn't shout, it doesn't seek attention, but it builds empires in silence. And when the results finally arrive, people will call you lucky. They won't see the hours, the sacrifice, the repetition, but you will know. You will know that it wasn't luck, it was commitment, it was faith, it was consistency. And it changed everything.